Let's have a look at making up a plan and profile drawing with Civil3D. This is going to require the use of a layout tab and some viewports. All right, so here's our drawing. So first thing we're going to do here is go into one of the layout tabs, and there's a viewport already in there, which I usually just erase. Okay, I just get rid of it. All right, and that gets me a fresh palette to kind of start with. Now, if I were doing this for real, instead of just a demonstration here, I would bring a border into that space there. And I would also, I guess before I even brought the border in, would be to set up the proper paper size for that. So that's found under the plot command here, or print, I guess it is, and then page setup. So you can go into page setup, and this is layout 1, that's the tab we're on. And you can modify that, and you could pick B-size paper, 11 by 17 here, and that's one thing that you'd want to do. All right. Then I would bring a border in, and then once I had that good to go, then I'm ready to make those viewports. I want to get all that stuff lined out, so I'm making the proper size of viewport. All right. All right, now the other thing I'd want to do would be to create a layer to put the viewports on. I usually call it _viewport is usually what I call that. So I would make that current. Now the other thing I would do with that would be to make it non-plotting. So this printer icon, I would toggle it so that it has a no symbol on it, a red circle with a line through it. That means it won't plot. Normally speaking, you don't want to plot up your viewport outlines. All right, so I've got the viewport or the layer ready to go. I'll use the make view command, and I'll put in a couple of viewports. So this one on top will be for the plan view, and then I'll make another down below for the profile view. All right, so what I would do next would be, let's work with this profile view and get this grid in my profile view. I'll double click in that viewport to open it up essentially so I can go in and modify the drawing. And the first thing I'll do here is pan and get that grid centered. Okay, then I'll get the scale set. In this case, I'll use 1 to 100. On your lab, there's a scale specified that you'll use. And then quite often I might have to do a little bit of panning to get that thing lined out. But that's pretty good right there. All right, so that's a pretty good start. Then to get out, I could just go and go back into paper space. And there's my viewport. Now sometimes people like to lock these so that once they've got it set up, zoomed properly for the proper scale and panned so it's visible, and they lock the viewports then by hitting that little icon, and that'll make it so you can't change your view, which avoids accidentally causing problems with your viewport. All right, now the other thing you might notice is this little thing over here, which is a little bit of a nuisance. That comes in with the style that we built the grid out of. What that is this thing right here. And that's on a layer, so what I usually do is just freeze the layer because there's nothing else on there that's of any import. So I go down to C road profile title is what that is. That's the layer. It's salmon colored, just like what we have on our drawing there. So C road profile and then title, TITL, and then I'll freeze that. Okay, and that'll go away. All right. All right, so now I've got a viewport made for that profile grid, and that's looking pretty good. So I'll do the same thing up here for the plan. So I'll use pan, and I'll get the road, the top plan view of the road situated there, centered, I guess. And then I'll set the scale to 1 to 100. Now, what you might notice here is that is going to be pretty tough to get that thing to fit, okay? To get it to fit just right. So what I'm going to have to do here is turn my view of this plan view change the view a bit, twist it a little bit, and that will allow me to get that full road to fit in the viewport. So this is done with a command called Dview Twist, and that's what I'd like to demonstrate here. So I'm going to do another little pan here and get that set up kind of the way I want it. Okay, now notice I've drawn a north arrow in here in model space. I've done that on purpose because when I do my Dview Twist, up won't be north anymore. So I like to get a north arrow that shows which way north is on these things. That can be a good idea just to help the person viewing the drawing to stay oriented. All right, so now I've got the viewport open, and I use the command dview, which I think means dynamic view. And what it'll do, it'll ask me to select the objects, and I'll just select all of them. So I'll just type all, and then hit enter. And then it'll look for me to select more, and I'll just hit enter again. Okay. And now I've got them all picked. Now there's usually a few objects that aren't selected that they say they're not in current space. That's not a problem. That's fine. And then you can go TW for twist. All right, and then you can just use your mouse and get this thing oriented the way you want it to be. Now that's pretty good right there. Okay, now I'm going to exit this command now because I've got that situated pretty well. And then I'm going to use pan once more just to pull that down. So now I've got that intersection in there. I might have cut, perhaps I could have done a little better job putting that north arrow in a better spot, but you know, I don't want to waste the time changing that, but I probably could have put that over here somewhere. Might have been a good idea. All right, so now I use that Dview Twist and got that thing oriented. All right, now you might notice that the profile view went away. So I'm going to double click in this viewport and just do a regen. And that'll come back, okay? So now I've used that Dview Twist, and I twisted that plan view to get it so it would fit the viewport. And then I've got the profile view down below. All right, now one other thing I want to mention here is, if we go back into model now. All right. As I said, there might be a better spot for that north arrow. Okay, now what I've done here, I've drawn in the road, and I've drawn in water line and a storm drain line. Now, when I do these plan and profile drawings, I just want one drawing with everything on it. And I'm going to use my layering to manipulate what I show in the different viewports. So typically, I have the road and storm drain in one viewport, and then the water and sewer in another. So even though I've got all that stuff drawn up in model space, what I would want to do when I go into my layout mode, let's say I've got, this is a good example, two viewports of the same drawing that are right next to each other. And let's say I want to control what's visible in which view. What I can do is use what's called VP freeze. It means viewport freeze. And I can freeze layers in certain viewports is what I can do. So let's have a look at how to use that. All right, so I've got this viewport on the left. Let's freeze the water out of that viewport. So what you do is you go into the full layer command. And then you find the layer that you want to freeze. So what I want to freeze there is the water layer. Now these layer columns all have full titles. They're just kind of pushed together so that they'll all fit on your screen, but you can pull the whatever this is, the borderline, I don't know what you call it, but to see what the actual title is. So the viewport freeze is this one here, VP, and then an F, which stands for freeze, and you can pull that out further to verify that. And all you got to do is toggle it. So I've got the one water layer, and I just wanted not do a full freeze, but a viewport freeze on that. So that'll freeze it in this particular viewport. You see it's gone. Now I can do the same thing over here. I'm going to freeze the storm drain in this layer. Oops, and that was my mistake there. I want to do the full layer command. And so I want to do the VP freeze on the one storm drain layer this time here. So I'll freeze that. Okay, so you can see that in model space, I've got everything shown. I draw everything in model space. And then I use this VP freeze as needed to turn different layers on and off and how I display them. The general idea here is you want one model of the entire project, and then you manipulate how you display it. Okay, so that's the idea.